Welcome everyone to the first ever OSU Talk event. It is a conference-esque sort of event where we have speakers from across the OSU globe, the OSUverse, OSU community, and it is simply a platform for people to share their stories and experiences and all of that good stuff with the rest of the world. So those of you listening through Twitch over at the OSU University Twitch channel, the chat is set to subscriber only because we don't really want people talking there. There is a text thread in the OSU dev server, which is where things are actually happening. And now that I think about it, I should add that to the panels in the Twitch channel. But okay, maybe I can do that real quick. But let's see, OSU University. But yes, join the OSU Dev Discord server, and in there's a text thread and a channel named Community Meetings. So that will be your place to discuss and commune over the wonderful wisdom that will be bestowed upon us. So it is advised to the speakers to not have that channel open. But I think it will be a place for, if you guys have any questions, you can put them there. And then after the speaker has finished talking, then I may take it upon myself to ask a follow-up question or two based on what has been written in that channel. So it is there for you to speak your mind on the talk as well. But yeah, let's see. Okay, edit panels. Okay, let's see, how quickly can I type this? OSU dev Discord server. There's no image. Okay, supports Markdown. OSU Talk event is hosted in a Discord stage channel in the OSU dev Discord server, https://discord.gg/ppy. Okay. Wholesome, add image. No, okay, I'll make an image. Some oversights on it. Oh, it's not even, it can't even link. Okay, hold on. Oh dear. All right. Okay, good enough. So yes, join the Discord server, the OSU Dev server, those of you listening on Twitch. And our first speaker is Panda Pabo. This is a wonderful player who will be discussing expectations, a very normal part of the human experience, and can in fact be a hindrance as well. So Panda will be discussing their experience with expectations and how that can actually limit yourself. So without further ado, thank you everyone for being here.
So, before I'm going to say anything, I'd want to apologize for my bad English because I'm not native and I hope you will understand. So, as Mr. Hypno said, I'm going to talk about my experience with expectation and why sorry, and why it was big. It was slowing me from improving. So there are a lot of expectations of, but the one that I'm going to talk about is when you expect yourself to do something that you can't. So for example, FC a map that is way outside of your comfort zone, or expect yourself to do as well as your good days, or being able to play very well at the beginning of your session before your before your oh, I forgot the words. Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah, before warming up. So expectation, you can. Expectation is a bit like a toxic relationship, but with yourself. And this does not only apply with OSU, but with pretty much everything in our life. like other games, like League of Legends, when you think you can carry a game, but you end up 117, or even in piano, when you think you can learn to play the Kogure opening, but 1 month later you still can't read the piano sheet. And at the end, you will just be frustrated and end up underperforming. Because when you are mad, there is a thing that you tend to focus more on the outcome rather than the process. So the outcome is your new top play, like how you are going to brag it to your friends. And the process is to play the map properly, to read the map. So it will make you miss more because you are not focused to the map. And you are going to be more frustrated. You try over and over again. And this is a vicious circle. So I had a lot of expectations, and I pretty much hated myself because I couldn't be the next cookiesy. And then I decided to quit also for almost a year. And when I came back with a fresh mindset, I was pretty much destroying my past top plays after a couple of days of derusting. And this bad mindset slowly came back. At the beginning, I was okay to shit miss, easy map, but after a while, I had the same expectation as before I quit. So when I miss, I retry over and over again, then I get frustrated, and I'm going to have a bad session. So I decided to quit also again, but this time for a month. And when I came back, I learned from my mistakes, and now I try to minimize my expectations as much as possible, because you can't erase all of your expectation. And actually, having a bit of expectations can make you improve because you push yourself to do better. But you should control them so it doesn't become toxic. So how to minimize your expectation? And the answer is simple. Don't look for PP and improvement, but instead look for having fun. When I improved the most is when I had a really good session and I was not telling to myself that I have to get more runs before the end of the session. And during most of this session, I play banger maps. And by the way, if you want to have more banger maps, I have a YouTube/TikTok channel called also Daily Banger. There I post banger maps every day, so don't hesitate to go there if you want more banger maps. And yeah, back to the subject. So during most of my good session, I mostly play banger maps that are outside of my comfort zone. And I don't mind about setting any good scores, I just having fun. I just enjoy the map. And sometimes when I got a farm map by pressing F2, I play the map, but I only allow myself to try 3 or 4 times. Even if I almost FC the map, I move on because I know that the next try will be worse. Because first, it was just good RNG, and second, I will have this expectation that I will FC the map on the next try, but I will just be less focused on the map and should miss more. So yeah, allow yourself to only try a few times and move on. And if you really want to see the map, maybe come back later. And yeah, that's it. To sum up, you should not expect yourself to do something that is outside of your comfort zone, because you will get frustrated and you will play. You will play worse. But instead, keep your expectation low, so that when you make a good play, you are happy about it. And when you play bad, you will just be okay with it. And I can guarantee you that you will make your also experience way better for both the gameplay and your improvements. And when you farm, allow yourself to only try a few times and then move on, even if you are close to FC it or clearing it, because you will lose your focus and should miss more often. So get rid of your high expectations And a wise man said, "Your greatest enemy is only yourself." So thanks for listening, and I'd like to thank Digital Hypno and also Dev to let me have this speech, because this subject is very important for me, because these high expectations was keeping me from improving, and it made me feel bad about for not being able to reach the top. And yeah, thank you for listening.
All right. Oh, all right. I'm back again. Thank you for starting off the event with actually somewhat inspirational talk. I think a lot of people discuss mindset in a very vague sense. And I think your specific examples with expectation and how it can really lead you away from, your passions. Since you mentioned you took two separate breaks from the game, one of them actually being 1 year long. So, um, but yeah, I think your thoughts on expectations were especially really valuable, in the way that you said expectations are a toxic relationship with yourself. I think oftentimes people don't realize that. I guess since we're in sort of intermission before the next talk, I will and let me know as well if you agree with this. But I think there's definitely a difference between expectation and your goals, because oftentimes expecting a certain outcome, and this especially has to do with expecting a certain emotion to come out of something that you do. Expecting a certain emotion can paradoxically remove your ability to feel that emotion in the first place, because um, we can relate it to things like living in the present and all those sorts of more abstract topics that can be hours long on their own. But I definitely think it's important to realize exactly what expectation can do to you. So yes, one of the many um, although one of the most important as well aspects of mindset, and how it can be really, really influential, not only to improvement and gaining skill, but also in having fun and enjoying the things that you do. All right, this has become the Panda podcast. So I'll read off this question from EK that says, "Is it a good idea to have a set of maps you like and rotate between them? There would be an expectation of slowly improving on them and an implied goal to FC them eventually, but is it healthy to just focus on a handful of maps?"
You should play more maps, so you can go in multi to find more maps, and I think having just a few maps to play will just you will just be, how to say, a bit be done with this map. You want to you- um playing more maps will definitely help you to improve more skill sets. Um, and yeah, don't play only a few maps, but play more maps, different type of maps, so you can improve more, but you can still come back to this map to see your improvement.
Oh, interesting. They mentioned that they're referring to how you said playing bangers. Before we get into that in particular, I'd be curious to have you define what exactly a banger map is.
So a banger maps is a map that you really like, for like you can love the map. So we can consider the map as a banger if you like the music or the type of map, you know, the fun of playing the map.
One of my favorite things about Osu, and one of the ways that I try to describe the diversity of maps to people, is that I believe the amount of different maps out there is as diverse as the amount of different types of music that exists in the world. And so if you think of all the different subcultures and genres and noise that people for some reason decide to describe as music, all the infinite different versions of music out there, there are similar parallels to Osu maps as well. So in that sense, there truly is something for everyone. And it's also very easy to think you are familiar with all the different types when in fact you've only just scratched the surface, especially as a relatively inexperienced player. It's easy to, for lack of a better term, maybe have certain stereotypes, or again, we can draw this back to expectations for the total amount of types of songs and maps that are in the game. Especially, I think it's a common assumption within the types of maps that exist in Osu, but an expectation of those who are not familiar with the game that it largely boils down to anime and Japanese music, and that's sort of where it ends. That, and then maybe the occasional random bits of noise that got put into an MP3 somehow. And I think even as you get into Osu itself, it's important to explore much more than you would expect you need to, because you'll truly never know exactly what you find out there. And even if you find nothing that you like, then at least you'll find things that you know and you'll learn that you don't like. So it's everything being a learning experience, but there's a lot to explore out there. So I guess to draw this back to the question, where is it a good idea to have a set of maps you like and rotate between them? Um, if I could give my own opinion, I would say absolutely, with the main reason being that if you have a certain set of maps that you like and you're able to always come back to them without that sort of passion dying, and really being able to have those few maps that you enjoy going back to over and over, I think that is a healthy way to maintain your progress with the game, and it really visualizes your improvement, especially over a longer period of time. But most importantly, I think usually when people have maps like those, it acts or serves as an inspiration for them to keep playing the game and improving and getting deeper and deeper into the game and the community as well. And in the end, I think as long as you're doing things that are fun for you, then that is the best way to play any game or do anything. So I think, again, to touch on that question, it's good to have a list of maps that you like, um, just as it is also good to explore more of what is out there in the world. So having a balance, everything's a balance. So those of you still here, through our little intermission, let's see. In 15 minutes, we will have our next speaker, Sudi Nader. Although I do wonder if she will be done with her match. From what I've heard, she's in a tournament match right now. Let's check her lovely Twitch channel. Oh, Papa John's advertisement. What they got? Stuffed crust pepperoni pizza. Oh no, excuse me, pepperoni stuffed crust, not stuffed crust pepperoni. Oh, she's playing a 5-year long map. Okay, we'll be here for a while. Since we have a small intermission, if anyone in the stage audience has their own 2 cents that they would like to share about expectation, you're welcome to raise your hand and elaborate on your thoughts as well. Tuna, there should be a little green bar at the top of your screen to join.
Hi.
Oh.
So,
Hello. Sorry.
Oh, hello.
I may dip into the audience so that the live stream overlay does not glitch out having more than 2 people on it.
so, um, expectations? Like, honestly, I had the same thing. I was always thinking about like getting 200 PP or like, I don't know, a really good score, or like thinking about getting a 7-star map pass, and it really it really slowed me down because I was thinking of this one thing when I could have been really focusing on like alternating, dreaming, like all of these things. And it really helped, like just taking rank out of the picture and taking PP out of the picture. And I banned myself. Um yeah, I banned myself because I couldn't think about anything else other than ranks. And I was getting bullied on the internet, and it was like, damn, okay, I'll just leave Osu. And I did. Um, but I kept playing offline, and then I found my new love for like alt maps and just having fun, and that allowed me to get new scores and like interesting maps. And yeah, it's good. It's really good advice. Oh wait.
Hello?
Hi.
Hello.
Hey, yes. Much appreciated your thoughts and insight. Yeah, I think expectation is one of those things that um whether fortunately or unfortunately everyone can relate to some extent. So, thank you Tuna for hopping in as well and giving your insights. And those of you who are not familiar, Tuna also has a talk scheduled on although I don't remember which day.
Sunday.
Yes, Sunday. So, look forward to that as well. Bit of a teaser into the thoughts of Tuna. But joining next is Sudi Nader for her lovely talk. Sudi, if you could raise your hand, and Panda and Tuna, I will
Oh,
summarily
do
dismiss
I?
you.
Yo, it's okay.
Yes, vanished to the
Yay!
audience.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Yes, thank you guys.
Thank you.
All right.
Sorry. Did you say something? I was just on the toilet.
Oh, nothing. Don't worry.
Okay, hello guys.
Hello. So your official start time is in 8 minutes, but in the meantime, we can have a lovely chat.
Mm-hmm. So how was the chat that just went on? Actually, I didn't get to listen.
That one was quite insightful, quite wisdomous. It was
Mm.
about expectation and how it can hinder lots of different aspects of your gameplay and improvement and also enjoyment in really both the game, although it was also mentioned that it applies to everything else where expectation exists, which in reality is everything.
Yeah, that does sound very insightful and wise.
Do you have any wisdom to add on to that topic?
On expectations, sorry, I just zoned out. I think like setting up expectations. Well, obviously I wasn't there for the talk, but yeah, I think expectations can easily be something that will hinder you if it's kind of done the wrong way. But you can set up healthy expectations for yourself. I think would be a good way to put
Yes,
it, right?
for sure.
And that will help you push forward like way more, right?
Yeah, I will add even better if you didn't listen to the talk, if you're giving your thoughts. That way we know that you're not rehashing what has been said.
Mm-hmm.
Someone did ask, so those of you who just recently tuned in, there is a text thread in the Discord server. It is the OsuDev server, which is discord.gg/ppy. And in the community meetings channel, there's a text thread where we will be taking comments and questions and all of that good stuff. So during the last talk, someone asked, Zachman asked, what is the difference between goals and expectations? I personally find that my expectations tend to be fine. My goals are usually unreasonable. Is this bad? Is it healthy to constantly be working towards a goal with a good mindset? Or will that still inevitably lead to less interest? So, personally, I was the one who mentioned the difference between goals and expectations. So I may take it upon myself to answer this myself.
Yes.
Although Panda as well, I think is typing their answer to that. But I think a goal is the destination that you are intending on reaching, and then your expectation is everything around how you think the path towards that goal will look like. So you can have a goal that's relatively reasonable, and I think a very important variable to understand when it comes to expectations is the time duration with which you expect to reach a certain goal. So let's say you have an expectation, or you set a goal for yourself to reach 5-digit rank, so 99,000. And let's say right now you're 200,000. So I think it's a realistic goal that anyone should set for themselves. And I think another thing about goals is that it keeps you striving to better yourself. As a side note, I think that's one of the things that people who reach the very top often struggle with, because at some point you run out of goals, or you've achieved all the goals that you had dreamt of in your wildest dreams. And so it becomes difficult to continue finding motivation. But regardless, the point is that you may have a realistic goal, but unrealistic expectations about how that goal will be met. If you expect to go from 200,000 to 99,000 within 1 week, in theory, you may be able to convince yourself that it's possible, but that expectation aspect of it, really what you're doing is you're imposing an arbitrary time frame with which to reach a realistic goal, but in an unrealistic time frame, and then you base your emotional response to whether or not you reach that goal based on whether or not you were able to meet this artificially imposed time frame that you set for yourself. And I think that can lead to very toxic responses to your own, I hesitate to say shortcomings, just because that in and of itself is very subjective, and since I guess whether or not it's a shortcoming is based on the expectation that you set for yourself. So I think one additional thought that I can give on setting like extreme goals, for lack of a better term. You can set an ambitious, I think that's the word, setting an ambitious goal for yourself. And I think if other people hear that goal of yours, it can be very tempting to have the expectation that the other person will not achieve that goal, and or within that set time frame, and maybe they won't, but I think even attempting that goal, you will likely get much closer to that goal than if you had tried to not do anything at all. So let's say you try building a house in 2 weeks, and definitely a large task, but I think the amount of progress that you will make trying to squeeze it into 2 weeks will be much more than if you had tried doing it within maybe 2 years. So you'll be surprised what you can do if you really commit yourself to ambitious goals and dreams, but don't let your expectations get the best of you. And additionally, I think don't let your expectations control you and your reactions to the circumstances that end up happening. So,
that was awesome.
Yes, thank you. That would be, I guess, my answer to that question. But next up, for our second lovely guest of the first ever OS Talk event, where we are themed all around overcoming obstacles, Sudi Nader, a very prevalent member of the community, very well-renowned player from the lovely country of Canada, and also rising star or most improved player of OS World Cup last year. So many accomplishments under your belt, and today you will be discussing your approach to training specific weaknesses, as you labeled your talk as left-hand training, which for to get everyone on the same page, that is referring to the tapping hand. So yes, without any further ado, thank you all for being here.
Yeah, I'm good to go. Oh, he's gone. Well, yeah, hello again, everybody. Nice to be here. I think this is pretty much my third time doing one of these kind of talks. I guess the first one was an interview with Habib. But here I am. Yeah, I am going to be talking about my approach to, I didn't want to call it a speed talk because this is not meant to be like, oh, I'm a speed player and I'm going to give you speed advice. It's more so going to be how I kind of broke this physical and almost mental barrier to start better approaching the skill set, which is speed and stamina. Now, if you have known anything about me in the past couple of years or whatever, if you don't know me too, I'm kind of infamously known for having a lack of stamina and speed. And it's something that's really brought me down, especially in tournament play, because when I am faced with, tough opponents that are pretty well-rounded, it's something that I really suffer on things like Nomad 2, like stream maps, and obviously DT's speed maps and stuff like that. So what I've been trying to do, I guess pretty much for this year, but definitely in the past month, I've been focusing way more on it, was to reduce the inconsistencies in my playstyle, I would say, because I know that the left hand, which for me is my tapping hand, is something that can be trained and can be improved upon. So I'm pretty much going to be talking about what I've done in my approach to kind of break down this problem that I had in order to improve. So just going to say again, this is not a speed talk necessarily. It's not going to make you better at speed. But I'm just going to talk about different methods that I've learned from talking to different people, and maybe someone will learn a thing or two or hear something that they haven't tried before. So I'm going to kind of split this up into two different things, which would be the mechanics versus the mentality portion. And I feel like you can separate these two into like any single skill set that you're trying to learn. There's obviously fundamentals to the mechanics, but you have to have the right mentality and mindset to be able to explore the skill set and build upon it. So in terms of mechanics, there's obviously like really basic things like pushing your limits and just training a lot, because for your tapping hand, it's literally a muscle. Like you can compare it to running a marathon, right? You can't run a marathon all at once. You really have to train it because you have to make it strong. But something that I didn't try for a while, and once I started doing it, I noticed a pretty significant improvement right away, was experimenting with my form. So what I did for a long time was I looked at people's streams, pretty much people that I looked up to in their tapping ability, and I looked at their form, like what keys they were using, where their keyboard was placed. Like, not so much that I asked them what they were doing, but I was just observing how their form was different than mine. And I think this was specifically good for me because back in the day, I used to play on a laptop keyboard and I was obviously an aim one trick. And I think I developed some really bad form habits in terms of tapping. One of the biggest things that I did before was wiggling my wrist a lot instead of actually using my fingers to play, where I think all your horsepower should pretty much come from your fingers. You don't want to use the momentum from your wrist wiggling back and forth to kind of cheese through streams. It's something that Xylus really pushed on me, actually, was to just play as if it was just my fingers moving and not any outside source. So what I did eventually was, I talked about it on Twitter, you might have seen, but I adopted partially the Cookie Z tapping style where he kind of anchors his thumb on his index finger. And I found that that was helping me reduce the wiggle in my wrist because a lot of it was coming from my thumb actually sticking out really far and I was just like wiggling it uncontrollably pretty much. So that's about the experimenting with my form. So I felt like that helped me. But obviously it didn't just give me unlocked stamina forever. I wish. But moving on, in my next point for the mechanics was more so something that I just learned after talking to some speed players, but your left hand should kind of be on autopilot mentally as an accessory to your right hand. And again, I talked about this with Silas on his stream as well. But if you're thinking about your left hand so much, obviously you're going to be straining it, when in reality you should be focusing on your aim and your left hand should be fully capable of just doing whatever stream pattern or stamina pattern that it wants to do. And I realized every single time I was thinking about my left hand, I would tense up so bad. Now, this is where some weird tips come in. Like, I don't know if you guys saw the White Cat tweet about how he said he focuses on his like toes when he's tapping or something. But like, if you can distract your mind from constantly thinking about, oh, like the stream's coming up, the stamina part's coming up, and just kind of let your muscle memory do the work, I think you're going to find that you're gonna strain yourself a lot less. And truly, there's kind of this running joke, especially with Devious Panda maps, if you think about that style of mapping where these high-level finger control maps are just speed maps. Well, it's because high-level speed players just have complete finger control, right? They can just do things without needing to think about them so much. So kind of separating this in your mind, I think, is something that helped me a lot in the mechanics side. So those are just random tips that I've come across, but I think one of the biggest things that was stopping me from pursuing the skill set was mentality, which is what I'm going to talk about a little bit. Because when you're someone like me that's 2-digit, and Habib was saying earlier, like, oh, most improved player of ODBC, like I have a bunch of these titles or whatever that makes me think that I should be so good at everything. But I had this mental barrier that almost didn't want me to be bad at tapping and be bad at stamina and be bad at streams, because it's really demotivating when you're at this rank, obviously, and you look at the people around you and they're fully capable of doing something that seems that's pretty much so simple but seems so hard for you. And recently, I guess within the past month or so, when I literally just put on no fail and was just playing to the ends of songs, getting like 80% accuracy, just playing to the very end and letting myself be bad, I noticed like a big change in my mentality. Excuse me. And after I kept doing that over and over again, it started just to become easier and easier, because of course I was developing that finger control and I was developing just that muscle memory that was letting me do these things. And that's where the practice comes in, right? Like you have to put the hours in to train your hand and train your muscles. But the main point of that is that I wasn't letting myself be bad. Like my speed is like 4 or 5 digit, and I wanted to make myself pretend that I could play speed at a 2-digit level, when in reality I can't, until I both unlearned the bad habits that I learned back in the day and just practice my heart out to get better. And I think slowly I am getting better. And I think if you've seen my tournament play recently, I think it shows a little bit. So I also wrote down here that learning becomes rewarding after you break this mental barrier, after you start doing things that you really couldn't. And for me, it really felt like a brick wall. Like I just could not do something, right? And slowly I was chipping away at it. I was trying new things. I was changing my mentality. And like now I feel like I can play stamina maps and play stream maps, and it's rewarding rather than demotivating. Like it's rewarding in a sense that I feel like I'm improving no matter how slow. Just a sip of water. So another thing that I've noticed is that when I'm I talked earlier about looking at people's forums and hearing what people have to say about how they tackled certain subjects, how they solved certain problems in their playstyle. And I've learned like a million bajillion things. I've heard so many things. And truthfully, there could be nothing that like someone could tell you like, this is exactly how I got good at speed, this is exactly what you should do, and maybe it just won't work for you. And I spent a long time just thinking about all these things in the back of my mind and thinking about what people do and trying to figure out ways where I could help it apply to myself and help myself get better, rather than me trying to emulate what they were doing, right? I was taking little sources of information from other people and trying to implement it into my playstyle, and finally eventually get better and find out what was good for me. Pretty much I was finding what my specific weaknesses were in order to tackle them, like my lack of finger control and my lack of form and just lack of practice overall, especially with the mentality portion. And there's some good tips out there. I know a lot of people have posted videos about tapping and about speed, which you should give a watch, even if you don't think that you'll learn anything. Like some of the most or one of the most interesting tips that I've gotten was something that Bubbleman said, and I've seen Bubbleman do in practice, was play really low BPM stream maps like 160, 150, and just focus on your finger control rather than the speed aspect, which I think is really interesting. There's also things like going on YouTube, and there's I don't know exactly what they're called, but it's piano hand exercises, and it's basically meant to kind of connect your brain to your fingers and make them do exactly what you want to do. And I think the main thing for me after all that, after the mechanics and the mentality, was that I finally found the fun in this skill set, and it felt like eventually something that I wanted to work towards. And of course, if you have fun doing something, you're gonna want to keep doing it. So I eventually got there, and I'm still training to this day. And I don't know when it's gonna, fully pay off, but it definitely does feel rewarding, and I feel glad that I am pursuing this skill set finally, even though I'm whatever rank. So overall, to wrap up my little talk is, yeah, I've definitely seen improvement in myself, and that's the only person you can look for really for guidance and for what is the word, affirmation, I guess. I think I'm improving, and thankfully there's people around me that were always helping me with tips and encouraging me to learn. And if you have those people in your life, then that is awesome, and you should not take that for granted. And eventually, after literal months, I think, of agony and whatever, maps bringing me to tears, like using all these tips or whatever, I finally am able to push through and learn the skill set. And that is my little talk. And maybe you learned something, and if you did, that is awesome, because a lot of this is coming from a definitely non-speedy player. So yeah. And I guess if you guys have any questions too, then I will be lurking in that little community talks thread, and I will try to answer anything. But yeah, thank you for listening, guys. Hello.
Alright, Wholesome, hello. No need to banish you to the audience just yet, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think a lot of people will really appreciate your perspective on improving, especially at a skill that didn't come naturally to you. I think most of the people who seek advice for skill are also in a similar boat for whatever they're trying to train, where it's not coming naturally to them. Obviously, that's why they're looking for advice, and it's easy to, if something came naturally to you, first of all, to not exactly know what you did that worked, but also to assume that whatever you did must be what will also work for other people. But I really appreciate the insight you're able to give on just how much information you had to absorb, and how much trial and error had to go into your own improvement for stamina and speed. And yes.
Yeah, well, yeah, thank you. I mean, that's all I can hope, is that just someone maybe learns something, because I think this is, I don't know if this is kind of on topic, but my approach when it comes to trying to tell people things or coach them or something is just say a bunch of random things, and then maybe something will stick in their head. So hopefully that's what happened here, and you guys will try something new, because it's hard. Like, I know what it feels like to be there, even though I'm such a high rank and I'm supposed to be very good. I know what it feels to be like just so broken at something that's so simple.
Yeah, I think especially when it comes to not only giving advice, but especially when you are taking advice from others, there's critical thinking that has to happen on both ends. For the person giving advice, it's really a matter of understanding the other person and knowing exactly what advice you think would work best for them. But then on the receiver's end, it's really important to not take the advice blindly, because hopefully this does not necessarily need to be said, but I will say it anyway, that nothing is one size fits all. And especially when it comes to advice and improvement and methods that quote unquote work best for different people, it's important to keep that in mind when taking other people's advice. So let's go through some questions that people have submitted through text. So EK asks, on the point of somebody else's advice may not work for you, you will not get anywhere if you just keep trying new things. At some point, you have to commit to some things long term. At what point do you switch from trying new things to committing?
Well, I think I touched on it briefly. This is the first thing that came to my head, but when I was changing my form, it's kind of something that I felt like, not necessarily that there was an immediate improvement, even though there was, but I felt like I guess kind of like in a knowledge aspect, I knew that this would be something that would benefit me in the future if I could learn it. So if you can find something that is comfortable initially, even if you're not so much good at it, and you have the willpower to learn it and improve it, I guess that would be my answer. But part of it is just from my experience too, I guess, as a player and knowing myself and how I play, right?
If I had to give my perspective as well, so you mentioned comfort in when you try a certain method or format of advice that someone gives you. I think it's also important to know how many different options are considered quote unquote acceptable. And that's not to say that if you've heard of all acceptable forms that other people tell you, that nothing else exists. But it's important, I guess, also in that regard to know if there are like 2 or 3 forms that everyone seems to use. And if you decide to commit to something other than those, then you are sort of bearing that risk and treading on refined territory, I guess. But I think, at least from what I've understood in the realm of giving advice for OSU, is that there is really no set like 2 or 3 types of forms or something like that as far as like acceptable or like viable methods of playing the game, which I think is something else that is really enjoyable about the game, where it's much more about comfort and minimizing pain. Obviously, as you mentioned, there are definitely bad habits that you can get yourself into, but that's also not to say that I don't remember what I was going to say. Let me think. There are bad habits that you can get into, but that's not to say that just because you're trying something that you haven't seen anyone else do doesn't necessarily make it a bad habit. But I think it's important to absorb the many different styles that other people use already and have found success with, just to get a better idea of what is out there and what you could try. Because let's say you've only ever you play the game and you also have one friend who plays the game as well, and so your points of reference are your own style that comes naturally to you, and then also your friend's style as well. And so let's say they're better than you at streaming, then you may be quick to assume that however they tap must be the better way to tap. And I think in regards to when you should switch from trying new things to committing, I think as soon as you feel like you've exhausted most different options for you to try, and from there you can turn to the option that felt most comfortable for you. There's a term called decision paralysis. This basically occurs. Is this the right term? Decision paralysis largely happens when you have so many options at your disposal that you wait, is this, or am I thinking of a different term? You get, if someone knows what I'm talking about, can you clarify and make sure I'm using the right term here? Or like analysis paralysis. It is also called that. The both terms are the same. But it's basically, the example like when you are given 4 different options. Let's say like flavor of ice cream, for example, as opposed to 400 options. Then you would think that if you have more options at your disposal, then it would be easier to make a decision. But in fact, it is actually the opposite. People find that when you have less options available to you, then it is actually easier to make a decision, because if we think of the etymology or what exactly the word decide means, it literally means to like kill off the choices that you forego. So I think in making a decision, you are also actively deciding to forego any other options that you decided to not choose. So I think that also can help to explain how it can be very tempting to want to mess or change every imaginable variable of your whatever it is that you're trying to decide on. And if you have 400 ice cream flavors, then you would want to go through all of them, right? And then weigh your options between like 5 or 6 that you really like, and then it'll be so hard to really make a decision. And oftentimes that leads to people not making a decision at all and switching back and forth, trying to really decide what's best for you. I think that is something that can happen naturally or quite commonly in something like Osu. If you're not careful, you end up in this rabbit hole of absorbing all the infinite different variations of tapping techniques and play styles that people have. And it can very easily lead to always wondering if there's a better style that could be out there to experiment with. But I think you need to have some peace of mind on two separate sides of the equation. One being that you have to be comfortable knowing that you've tested a couple different options and that you feel like you've experimented with enough different styles out there to have ruled off some major competitors of the option you are choosing to go with. And then also you need some peace of mind knowing that whatever you are choosing to go with is something that's comfortable for you and something that, although it might not be perfect, I think the perfection of whatever style you choose will come with more practice and not necessarily with the first day or two even that you test that style. So if I had to give a more definitive, much less wordy answer, I think it comes down to if you felt comfortable or if you saw few red flags in your first experience with that style. If one of the first instinctive thoughts when you tried that style was like, oh yeah, I think I could get used to this, although it's a little uncomfortable now, I can imagine that it would feel better as I practice it more. That is, I think, a good sign that you are on the right track when choosing a style for yourself. So yeah, I guess that's my answer for that.
Just so wise. So wise. But no, I agree. Yeah, it's definitely partially what's best for you because humans are so unique and just the practice you're going to put in and all that.
Yeah, and I also wanted to touch on when you mentioned that it seems that there are expectations that other people put on you, especially given your rank and various other accomplishments that you've had across the Usuverse.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that can very easily or naturally lead to expectations of how well you should be able to perform on every skill in the game, including stamina and speed, which may not have come naturally to you. And that can really create an extra hurdle in trying to improve because you sort of adopt those expectations that other people put on you and expect that if others have this expectation of you to perform a certain way, then you should be able to live up to that, even though it definitely does not come without the proper training and suffering and tears that come with really dedicating yourself to improving something that you're bad at, especially in your specific situation. So yeah, I did really appreciate that you brought that up as well. I think it's something that a lot of people can find solace or whatever the word is in in hearing that they are not alone in their frustration of training a certain skill. So yes, any
Yeah.
other thoughts to add?
Not necessarily. I mean, to this day, actually, you know what? My thought is gonna be by 2023, I'm gonna be able to death stream 230 BPM and FC every single map of the game. And thanks, Habib, for letting me talk. Yep.
Yeah, I'll be watching Reddit for when those score posts start rolling in.
Yeah, it'll be all at once too.
Yep.
No one will expect it.
It'll be r/Zudinator game.
God. Yeah, I'm gonna listen to the rest of the talks, but I gotta dip and also end my stream because I gotta go to work. But if you guys are listening to my stream, or if you're in here in the server and you're not in the OSU University Discord, you should join that and also join the dev server because there's cool people and you can learn and it's cool.
Yes, especially follow or join the dev server, OSU Dev, that is discord.gg/ppy. That is where you can follow along with all things OSU, the official OSU development, and you can get the sneak peek on everything that's happening to make the game a better place for everyone. But yes, thanks Zudi for joining and everyone for listening so far. Good luck at work. And
thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Goodbye, friends. Bye.
Oh dear. She left us alone. Well, next up is Like a Noob. If you're here, you may raise your hand, or I might have to snag you from elsewhere on the internet. Oh, there you are. Give me one sec. Okay, you should have the bar. Yep, there we go.
Hello.
Hello. Say something?
I'm doing okay. I'm just talking. How's everyone doing today?
There's some static in when
in my mic.
Yes.
Okay, this has been happening a lot lately. Let me just switch mics and see if it just sounds better.
Oh, that is much worse.
That is much worse. Okay. Well then.
Try going back.
We're gonna do some mic roulette here.
Okay, this one's good.
Okay. That's weird. I'll go look at that later.
All right, perfect. So, let me turn you up a little bit as well. Okay, can you say something?
Yeah. How's it going? I've already asked that, but yeah, I'm really happy that Zudi kind of brought that mental aspect into it because I know, especially like in the speed context, there's a reason why speed abuse is a common term that's thrown around, especially in tournaments, where just like a very simple concept might be something that you're struggling with. And then I'm really happy that Panda kind of brought in the idea of goals, because part of what I'm going to talk about today is how goals and obstacles kind of interact and how you might have to think about both instead of just one.
Yes, definitely agreed. So to give you a quick introduction and then you can get into your talk, but next speaker here at OSU Talk event is Like a Noob, a very, very seasoned tournament player in the rank restricted world. You have, at least in the context of this talk, we'll be discussing how running into walls and sort of hyper focusing on specific goals can really be a detriment, and I guess also how sometimes that can be necessary for better or worse. But yes, without further ado, thank you everyone for being here.
Yeah. Just to prime the thing, because I understand there's like two different types of people: the people who understand tournaments and might be playing them, and the people that might just be here because they play solo. The only thing you need to know about tournaments is like, the base idea, which two people play the same map, who gets the better score wins, and that there are rank tierings. So like maybe only 5 digits can play the specific tournament, or only 6 digits can play the specific tournament. But that's about all you need to know about the whole tournament idea or tournament scene, I guess. So yeah, I'm like a noob. Habib did introduce me pretty well. I have been playing in tournaments since 2017, so it's been almost like 5.5 years by now. And when I first saw the overarching topic of this event of overcoming obstacles, I instantly thought back to that time when I was really in the weeds of the rank restricted tournament scene. And today I would kind of like to tell you my experience through those years and delve deeper into how maybe we define goals as well as obstacles, and maybe how we approach these obstacles to begin with. I hope by the end of this, I'll give you an avenue to think about how to think about obstacles, not just thinking about them in general terms. Because I think the word overcoming might be not a blanket term you can use for every obstacle that you encounter. So I did start tournaments in early 2017 about the skill range of what like the 6-digit realm is now. And I basically instantly fell in love with the idea of competition, the drive to beat people. I got third in the first ever tournament I played. So I really got super deep into the meta of tournaments very quickly. Before this was very common, I did scouting basically on everybody I like played against. And I really focused on picking up more niche skill sets. Like at this time, A-Rate Hidden was something that not everyone can really play well, or even just like Small Circle Hard Rock, anything that would give me an advantage. And I really just started to gear my play sessions to improve to win tournaments, which is great. It's very nice to have a goal for play sessions. I know a lot of people are like, play for fun, play for whatever, and that's like the end goal, right? But for me, it was beneficial for me to have a goal to get me to that point of having fun, and my goal was getting better at tournaments. Very quickly, and what I would like to call my tournament career, I ran into a monthly tournament called Rapid Tournaments. Basically, what it was is it was a monthly tournament that if you placed in, so like fourth and above, you would get invited into a invitational tournament. And if you won that invitational tournament, you would get a profile badge on your user page. And to me, that was the first time I heard about profile badges, and it really like struck me and like awestruck me. I was like, I can have this special thing that no one can really get put on their user page. A very selective amount of people can actually get this. So I tunnel visioned on it. I sat in the range for rapid tournaments, which was 30K to 100K. And I just continued to try to get better and better. And I sat in there for 2 whole years. This practice is pretty standard, even back then. Rather because you just don't play a lot or whatever, you don't get ranks, but you're still really good. And it was working. I was getting better. I was feeling improvement. Our rank wasn't going up, but my consistency was getting better. Even through the many play style changes I did, I went from mouse to tablet back to mouse in that time. I was able to kind of still enjoy playing the game because I had this goal that I was set on. And you know, the sandbagging worked for me. I got second place in the 5th invitational I got invited to. And the only reason why I didn't get first was because I had to play against probably the biggest D ranker in that rank range at the time. And that should have been the first problem I should have seen. I should have seen that there was a problem with the obstacle that I was looking at that was in between me and the goal. Is that it was moving. It wasn't based on what I can do. It was based on what other people were doing. And I think about like, you know, moving the bar is something that you shouldn't be doing. Just like in general, like if you're working on a project, you should know like what you need to do to get an A on that project or work or whatever have you. So moving obstacles are super hard to pin down what you need to do yourself to get through that, right? So because I got second, I'm like, I'll just keep getting better. This guy who beat me, he can't play in these anymore because he has a badge. So I'll be good. I'll win the next one. And the following invitational that I got invited to, I podiumed again, but I got third. And after getting third in this invitational, I was so frustrated. I was so burnt out. I was so like, I'm doing everything I feel like I can be doing, but I'm still falling short. So I did what a lot of people tell you to do when you're burnt out. If you go out and you ask somebody, hey, I'm burnt out. What do I do I still want to play this game, but I'm burnt out and doing X, Y, and Z. What do I do? Usually they tell you to try something new, to approach the game differently. So that's exactly what I did. I ranked up from 29K to 12K, which is a huge jump, in about a week and a half. I was farming my butt off, and my skill ceiling was definitely not realized at that point. It was unrealized. I could have kept going. I could have just kept playing this way, and who knows how good I could have gotten. But then I looked on the forum post and I saw a forum post. It said Wilted Tree Tour 2, which is a rank restricted World Cup tournament. And I instantly saw that, and I'm like, I'm close to the rank range cutoff. I can slow down a little bit. I can enter in this tournament, and maybe I can land myself on the USA team, which is usually like one of the best teams in any rank restricted tournament, like for World Cup or even like generally in World Cup tournaments. So I tried out, and I got put onto the USA B team, which is not the A team, but it's still a spot. And I was like, okay, this sounds familiar, right? I'm going to continue working on myself, and this is the goal I'm setting for myself now. I sat in the rank range a lot. I played a lot of Score V2, did all the D rank or whatever stuff. And I eventually, 2 years later, five-digit World Cup, which is actually labeled 5-digit World Cup this year for the first time ever, I got put onto the A team at that tournament. It was basically the biggest like 5-digit tournament ever hosted. Winning it would be a crazy deal for anybody. Basically, every good 5-digit player is playing this, and if they're not, they're on a B team or C team because there's people in their country that are better than them, even though they're still like a top 50 player. So I played. I put my heart into this tournament. I wanted to get this badge because then I'd be like, okay, I got everything I want now, and I can get like unshackle myself basically. And guess what happened? 3rd place, bronze, no badge. I was so distraught. I think this was the event that finally made me realize the problem with the obstacle I was going, like that was between me and my goal of getting a badge. I always knew that D rankers were a problem and they were the reason why I didn't have a badge, but I also understood that I was also a D ranker because I was trying to be better than these people. And at this point, I think I realized that this was actually hindering my enjoyment of the game. I was playing in every single tournament that had a badge to be won in it, and I was playing like 15 hours a week, practicing just map pools, doing like 8 or 9 matches on the weekends, and it was really like stressing me out, to say less. So I thought about it a lot after losing in 5-digit World Cup. And I was like, okay, let me rinse repeat. I did this before. I'm going to do this again. I'm going to start hyper farming. I'm going to just start getting better, work on my fundamentals, work on just getting better generally. And then I can play tournaments in the upper ones. That's okay. But something different happened this time. Around 6K, so I farmed from 12K to 6K, I started plateauing super hard. I started losing motivation to get better. I started seeing less results. And now I was stuck in a position where I was not good enough to compete in the tournaments above me. I mean, I could still get in, qualify, play like a match or two, and leave early. But I couldn't play the 5-digit ones anymore. And I was really like I was at a crossroads. And then I started thinking about, man, I'm pissed at myself because I basically skill capped myself by sitting in 5-digit for so long. All of that effort that I was putting in tournaments, I could have been putting in to get better. And then I think about my friends who I met playing tournaments who played like 1 or 2 and they continued to get better and continue to get better. And now they're better at me in solo and tournaments. They did not let a specific prowess and a specific rank range define who they really are in the game. And I think that's when tournaments become a hindrance. When you start to define yourself solely within the confines of like 1 or 2 set goals and not thinking about what you're doing in a big picture. I like to think about the box analogy, right? You have a box, you can put stuff in the box and you can close it up and it's not going to go anywhere. That's kind of what I did with my goals. I put my one big goal of getting a badge and putting it in this box. And then that obstacle followed it inside the box. And I stayed in that box for so long that I started feeling familiar with this box. I started feeling okay being in this box. And then when I finally decided it was time for me to get out of the box, for the box to deteriorate, for me to rank into 4 digits, they didn't know where to go. They liked this confines that I set, and they didn't want to spread out. So I think that's like main point number 1. You need variety in your goals. You need variety in your goals so you're gonna have variety in the obstacles that you encounter. I like to think about this as like a network of goals and obstacles. There's like, you can have 5 or 6 or 7 goals and they're all spread out in, this can be applied to life too, not just OSU, but like, let's stick to OSU for a second. Like you can have the goal of getting a badge, but you can also have the goal of getting this really cool like PP play, or you can have this goal of being better than your friend. And sometimes your obstacles will overlap between these. And that's kind of how I view like how you can go about obstacles. And it would be really easy for me to stop there and tell you like this is how you should be approaching obstacles. You should be spreading out your goals so your obstacles will spread out and you'll be able to look at them more in like very different angles, right? But it's really hard sometimes to see tangible obstacles, right? Like for example, look at that PP play. It's very easy to be like, okay, this is my obstacle getting this play. This is like a really jumpy map, so I need the aim. I need to practice the aim rather on this map or on other stuff or what have you. But like, what's the obstacle for winning a badge or for being better than your friend? So this is how I like to think about obstacles. Think about an obstacle that maybe you're dealing with right now, rather it be like an OSU one or just a general life one. Is it hindering progress towards a goal? Because an obstacle is really only an obstacle if it obstructs progress towards a goal. And so you ask yourself that question. And if it's not really explicitly obstructing a progress towards a goal, try to think about it in two different ways. You can rather think about it in the sense of, okay, let me morph this obstacle so it points towards a goal, or let's make a goal in order to try to push through this obstacle. That's a very simple one. A very like simple one is like maybe you haven't played in a while and you come back and your finger control is pretty bad. Well, you have no goal to like kind of set yourself going forward of like, okay, how do I get my finger control better? Okay, maybe I want to play this map and I want to be able to not finger lock in it because if I finger lock, I fail. Or maybe like there's this map I want to play and it's finger control heavy. Let me try to like get a higher like accuracy in it, like a 95 plus accuracy in it. That's one way you can think about it. The other way is really thinking about if there's a goal that you should set towards it. A very silly example, but a very easy example is like, imagine you're just a Hard Rock DT player. You love playing going fast all the time, 100%, and you really don't care about like reading. And you go into that one multiplayer lobby, and someone puts on a Yolks Pie AR7 map, and you can't read it at all. Well, maybe that's not like a priority to you. So maybe put that off to the side, sidestep it for a second, and don't hyper focus on it. And of course, this works the other way around too. This works towards goals as well. If you have a goal, but you can't picture the obstacle that might be associated with it, you're not going to be able to work towards that goal really efficiently, right? That was me for so long. I had this goal of getting a badge, but there was really like, I did not really understand the obstacle until it was too late. Because you really need to understand both the goal and the obstacle in order to truly address it, right? You need to be able to see your goal and then address the obstacle, because without that, you're kind of aimlessly going around. And I think this is the proper way to think about obstacles, not about really how to overcome them per se, but how to address them and figure out if they're worth tackling in the method you currently hold right now. You know, 5-digit World Cup wasn't my last 5-digit tournament, actually. I played one more after that. While I was farming out of the range, I got asked to be on a team by my best friend Food. It consisted basically of me, him, and a bunch of our North American friends that we met along the 5-year journey that both of us have had. Most of them were like us. They were ranking up. They wanted to kind of get out of the range for one method or another. And this was kind of supposed to be our last hurrah in the 5-digit scene. So we played. We qualified. We won our first match. We kept winning. We won quarters. We won semis. And as we approached finals, we looked into the eyes of the 5-digit World Cup winners. They created a team themselves and they were playing. And in some twist of fate, we beat them in both finals and grand finals to take mine and most of my teammates' first OSU tournament badge. So did I overcome my obstacle by reaching my goal? I don't know. That's what I'm still trying to figure out. Thank you.
Applause. I definitely think the amount of hardship that goes into such a long journey, I think it's sometimes hard to convey exactly what goes into a 5-year long journey of this. And I think even in a quick 15-minute talk, it's almost impossible to really convey. But I definitely respect the message that you conveyed through this whole story, especially in understanding your goals and how there's more to achieving a goal than just focusing on the goal itself. And I think that's definitely something that was very core to your experience. So I'm actually curious, do you feel like come your last tournament, which was Dolphins, I believe?
Yeah,
Which
Dolphins Winter Tournament 2.
Dolphins Winter Tournament 2. Do you feel like at that point you had changed your perspective on your goal? And do you feel like that influenced your ability to perform better and end up winning in the first place?
I definitely had a core goal shift after the 5-digit tournament because I knew that it wasn't up to me anymore. Like, especially in team tournaments, right? It's not solely up to me. So I need to kind of let go of this idea that it's my responsibility to get this badge. I think I shifted more to let me do these for fun. Let me try to, have fun with friends or have fun with the experience of it instead of like the end goal of it. I think that was a very core idea that I kind of took out of that because at this point I was farming, but I still didn't hit that like peak yet. So I was like, okay, let me maybe do a mental shift and then we'll see how that goes because I definitely needed a mental shift after coming up short so many times.
And it sounds like your mental shift was in the form of focusing more on just enjoying the tournament and playing with your friends from 5-digit tournaments in the past, rather than necessarily focusing on that goal.
Oh yeah. I definitely like the one thing that stood out in my mind is that even though there was so much riding on the 5-digit World Cup 2020, which is the one I played, I really it was kind of like showing up to a job almost. I was showing up to play. There was a little bit of camaraderie, but not much. And that wasn't any fault of anybody else's, but it definitely felt very like business-like and it's like going about it. And the tournament that we ended up winning was definitely more of like a, hey, let's join, let's have fun. I showed up to a match on like 0 sleep, like one of the round of 64s, and I was like delirious, and all my friends were making fun of me for that. It was more like a laid back atmosphere of, hey, we're here as friends, we're here to have fun. We are also very good at the game. Let's not leave that out of it. It was like the combination of some of the Canadian 5-digit players and American 5-digit players who played in the World Cup previous. But we were really there just to have fun, clowning each other a little bit, and just enjoy it how we could.
I want to emphasize the part you mentioned about there's a difference between your goal and the obstacle that's preventing you from reaching that goal. And as the saying goes, insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And I think, at least for me, one of the lessons that I learned from your story is how important it is to reflect on what is preventing you from reaching a certain goal and removing those obstacles that are in your way. And in your situation, it seemed to be more about if your goal is to win a tournament and you're falling short, then the obstacle to some extent would be to improve your skill level rather than going into a different tournament with the same or similar skill level and hoping to keep rolling the dice until it lands in your favor. I think that is, a really important lesson in analyzing your own situations and knowing what is really holding you back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's also it's a portion of that, and it's also the portion of they say this, they pair this with the anxiety all the time, but like recognizing the stuff that's out of your control and then being able to release it, because that was my problem for so long, is that I felt like it was solely my fault or like my responsibility to take the tournament win, when in reality I can only do so much. If the person sitting across from me SS's a map, well, there's not much wiggle room there, right? Even if you play really well. So it's a little bit of that too. It was the mental shift of being able to identify what you can do and release the stuff that you can't.
Yeah, I really appreciate that you bring up external forces and the goals that you're trying to achieve. I think, especially when trying to relate these lessons outside of OSU, it's important to understand when you're setting a goal, if the goal is based on external factors versus internal factors. So, is accomplishing your goal based on solely things that you are in control of, or is it based on things that other people are in control of, or other people's performances?
Mm-hmm.
Especially related to tournaments. One of my favorite ways of explaining tournaments to people is that it's not about getting a good score, it's about getting a higher score than your opponent. And in that sense, I think a good reference match in that regard is Bubbleman versus Vaxei in Game Osu 2018, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
In a grand display of performance from both sides, neck and neck, near SS on every single map. It's not to say that the player who lost that match performed poorly, but that's really just the nature of competition. But it's important to take those things in mind when your goal is to win a tournament, and understanding how much of that is under your control. And rather than setting your sights, setting your goal and expectation on achieving that result that has external factors associated with it, it's much healthier as far as expectation goes to focus more on having the goal of doing your own best. And regardless of how the result goes, then as long as you know that you did what you could and performed your own best way, then that is, I think, the ultimate goal to strive for.
Oh, definitely. It's just in OSU, it's really, it takes a lot of effort to get to that point, right? And for me, it was a lot of, okay, every time I missed, I feel like I could, because I was like the very analytical player, I could look at it and be like, okay, this is what I did. This is like what I messed up on. If only I did that better, like I would have played better. And that's the pitfall you have to stop yourself from putting yourself in, you know?
Yeah, I think when you fall short of a goal, there's very few natural responses other than regret and reflecting on what ifs or if onlys. But
Yeah.
I think if nothing else, it's how we grow and learn from our past mistakes. But a couple other questions from the chat before we move on to our last talk of the day. So let's see, I believe there may have been one earlier on. Yes. So let's see. Okay, actually, let's grab this question down here from EK once again. First of all, appreciate all of your questions, and since I keep repeating your name, I will ask you if it's supposed to be pronounced as EK or if I read it as one syllable, as Ek or something like that. Do let me know.
Oh, there's a pronunciation in the About Me section.
Oh, is there really?
I think it is supposed to be EK.
Oh, EK. Oh, okay. Well, that is good to know. So the question is, as a tournament player, do you feel a responsibility to help your teammates reach their goals?
I think, especially if you're doing quantity over quality, which a lot of people end up doing, especially in the rank restricted scene, you shouldn't feel the burden, I guess is the right way to do it. You shouldn't feel burdened to help your teammates reach the goals, but there is some sort of camaraderie there that you have to utilize and that you can utilize to the fullest. Of a perfect example is when me and was sitting in a call one time, and one of our good friends, Flat Paper, came in and he asked us, I really don't understand how to stream. Like, what do you guys do? Like, how do you stream? And we sat there with him and kind of helped him understand like stream technique and the very basics of that. And then he went on to be like one of the best stream players in the rank range for a little bit. So like, there's a camaraderie there that a lot of us are friends, especially when you like everyone's so interconnected that you can definitely help your teammates reach their goals. I honestly don't know if I fully answered that question. That's kind of my anecdote from that.
No, I think that's a really good point. When I read the question, I more so thought of during the match itself, to
Mhm,
everyone having the responsibility of putting their best score up. But I
mhm,
think your point is even more important than that, in that between weekends, which is when matches are held, it's more about helping each other grow as players and as teammates, and giving them the advice and sort of partnership that they need to grow as
mhm.
well.
There's definitely like skill to be there for hype men inside of matches. One of my favorite teammates of all time was like only on like 3 or 4 maps like during a specific pool, but their presence in the voice call was like more boosting than anything than any SS they could have done in the match itself. So there's always like camaraderie, there's always team spirit you have to think about inside of like especially team matches. But yeah.
Yes, definitely agreed there. So last question that I'll take real quick before we move on to the last talk of the day. But Panda asks how to overcome the feeling of I could do better.
That's the question, isn't it? Like from like my extensive tournament experience, the best like one of the I guess best and weirdest advices I've ever received was someone just told me, just play, man. Don't worry about the end result. Just play. You're here to have fun, right? Just go out and play, which is so counterintuitive to how I approach tournaments or just like solo play in general, right? Um, but that's really like the mindset you have to put yourself in, is that this is fun. The feeling of being competent is fun, but that shouldn't take away from, that shouldn't like be more disarming than the action of it itself, if that makes any sense. But that's like that's really the only thing I've kind of come to. If anyone has any better ideas, I would love to hear them, because that's something I feel like a lot of people struggle with, and that's kind of how I mentally think about it.
Yeah, I think well said on your end. It has a lot to do with expectation and your primary motivation for why are you playing in the first place. As far as I think everyone knows to some extent that they could do better than how they perform, majority of the time. But I think acceptance for however things end up going, and allowing your goal to be more focused on enjoying the moment, however it ends up being, is
Mhm.
really important. But yes, with that, we will move to our final talk of the day. Thank you again to, I'm not sure if you have a preferred name actually. I guess this is not the most opportune situation to ask you, but
Honestly, as long as it's not like just the first 2 words in my name, as long as it's not like Leica or Lycan, I don't really mind anything.
okay, I will address you by your full formal name, Mr. Like a Noob. Thank you for being here for this talk, and I will have to banish you to the audience. But
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
yes, very insightful
Really,
story. Thank you, thank
really
you.
appreciated this.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, hello. So, welcome. The final talk of today for OC Talk event. This is, again, a 3-day talk, so we'll have talks on Saturday and Sunday as well. But joining us is Mackie Donalds, or just Mackie. You have been playing the game for quite some time, and today you'll be focusing on reaching barriers in your gameplay and how you can best overcome that. So I will leave you to your talk, and thank you everyone for being here.
Thank you so much, Hypno. So, well, everyone, I'm not sure if you guys saw the title that I had for my talk on the OSU website, and it was Break Your Walls Before They Break You. While some of you might find that very funny, I certainly tried to be kind of to appeal to the people with that title. But I think everyone will soon get to realize what I wanted to talk about regarding that. I think it's very obvious. Like, break your walls, you can refer to your biggest obstacles. That's basically what this is all about, right? His walls in Osu. And I will be trying to talk about that. I will talk also a bit about my personal experiences with the game and what brought me to the point where I'm at. I'm currently a rank 400 Osu player, and it didn't always start like that, right? I created my account in January 2018, and then in May I started actively grinding. But then there's something that I feel like it's very unusual happened. I went from a 6-digit that was barely grasping the game to becoming a full-fledged, very high 4-digit and 3-digit very soon after in 1 year of gameplay. And I think people would think, oh, that's really awesome, right? But then there was something that happened, and that's what I want to talk about, the obstacles here, right? As you can see, I didn't go up that much in ranks. Like you used to say MREC or something, right? He had a very exponential rise to the top. And I think it's very, even if it's not the same extent as I did, right? I think it's something that a lot of people can definitely recognize themselves in this situation. Of course, not as extreme as I said, but people just reach a point where they feel, oh, I'm stuck in this rank. What can I do now, right? It's very hard because, as I said, 3 years from gameplay until I reached the 3-digit mark until today, and I have barely progressed, or so it would seem, right? I think there are very serious mental repercussions on hitting walls when playing the game. You will feel like you are progressing less just because you don't see the number close to your profile increase. Thus, you don't get like that dopamine rush of you improving, right? And also, as weird as it seems, because it's such a mechanical game, where in terms of aiming and tapping, right? It's such a mental game as well, and I'd say it's mostly a mental game. If your mentality is not in the correct place, I do not think you can improve all that much. There are players that improve even through that. I'd say I probably was one of those cases. My mentality used to suck a lot. It's still not the best, but it used to suck a lot. And it's a very important mental game. And I think if you can set your mental to be a fairly good one, right? You are just setting yourself on the path to success in this game. And one of the other mental repercussions that comes from hitting those very big walls that you cannot get through at all, or it so seems, of course, I'm going to talk a bit more about that still, is that considering your past improvement rate, you will expect a constant improvement rate similar to that one. And the thing is, we have heard talks here as well by Panda, by Zuri, and by Lycanoob, where they all mention expectations. And I will talk a bit about expectations against goals, because I think those are two different things that are very important for us to understand here. And you expect yourself to keep on going through that path. And I'm pretty sure I'm not alone in this. If you guys identify with this, you can just type it out in the chat as well, just so I don't feel like this is that far-fetched. I think it's a fairly common thing. But yeah, you will expect yourself to keep on going at 100 kilometers per hour or something like that. Then your car just starts, with hiccups, and you just become like, you go at 10 kilometers per hour, 5 kilometers per hour, but your car is still going, right? And I think that's a thing people need to realize. Improvement rates will be different from people to people, and besides that, your improvement rate will differentiate itself from when you were just starting out and the point you are at right now. It will always fluctuate. It will never be the same. Well, talking a bit more about myself and how I got to realize that this was a real situation that was happening to me about the walls and all that, right? As I said, I am a player that very quickly rose through the ranks. But then I hit a wall in terms of ranks, and I just couldn't gain that many ranks, right? And we all know, as also players, even if we don't focus exactly on ranks, it's always very cool to see that number go up. You get that dopamine rush, right? But I started to get into something else to try and kind of get my mind away from it. And I started playing OSU tournaments. I started grinding them a lot. And then, since there's no one really in the Portuguese community, and I think this is more something that applies to me, but I think you guys should think about this related to your own experiences, right? I'm going to be talking a bit about myself, so there's some context behind it all, but I think you guys should relate this to all of your experiences. I have felt an immense pressure from my own head in terms of tournament performance from my national community, because they were like, oh, that's the guy that plays tournaments. He must do well, right? And what if I didn't? What if I didn't? And it just made my mental health regarding the game a bit worse when I could not achieve those expectations that, to be completely honest, I was setting for myself. And I'm not sure if people here are aware of the situation regarding Portuguese OWC positioning. We have been trying very hard to qualify for OWC, and last year, last 2 years ago, we got seed 33. And for those unaware of the tournament scene, in OWC you need to achieve seed 32 to pass onto the next round. So that's another one of those obstacles that's still been there. And I think it's important to mention there's a lot of different obstacles, and you will have yours as I had mine, and I'm trying to explain. But I think it's very important to mentalize yourself of those obstacles and to overcome said obstacles, right? Firstly, I wanted to talk about there's a very severe difference between your rank and your actual skill. And I think something that you will realize by that is, even if you haven't improved in rank or you have even decayed, even if you've gained PP, right? If you go onto your local scores, right, only your local scores, and you play a map, you will most likely get the same score or better. Very rare cases you will get a worse score. And that's a thing that people just hyper-focus themselves on. Like, oh, I'm not gaining any ranks. I am not improving. What am I doing wrong? And then they just go down into that spiral of mental madness, if you can call it that even, that they are not improving. And I think that's very, very wrong. And that's the thing I've sadly had to learn all by myself and with a lot of time invested into the game. And I really wanted just to share this with you, because I think being aware of that might not seem by much, because you're like, aha, that guy is just saying, oh, look at this, and I will do that, and it's not going to be the same. Just try and mentalize yourself of that. You are mostly always improving. There are very rare cases where it doesn't happen. You are mostly always improving. You're just not noticing, and you're gaslighting yourself into believing you're not improving as well. That's a very serious issue that I think I've not been alone there, and I think a lot of other people probably have felt. As said on other talks, though, there's the expectations against goals. I think goals are very, very different from expectations. This was already talked about. I will try not to waste much of my time on this. And I just think goals are something that's very healthy to set for yourself. I think it's important to push yourself to try and achieve those goals. But expectations, you're kind of, I'd say maybe on a time constraint. You're like, oh, I think I'm gonna be able to do this today. And if you don't, you're gonna get really mad. But if you say, I eventually want to be able to FC this map, to FC a map of this star rating, to achieve said PP, that's I wouldn't say that's unhealthy, but expectations certainly can be for sure. And I think another bad hyper focus that you can have that definitely wouldn't help you improve and just okay, how do I put this? I have like a list of topics here that I want to talk about, but reaching this one is kind of tough to talk about it. But hyper focus is when you focus on a certain skill set, because I think you can focus on a certain skill set and be good at, like, for example, speed, aim, reading, stuff like that. But as if you just neglect everything else, you will just not be able to progress on the skill set you actually want to be good at. I think there should be a healthy balance of everything. And I don't think that if you think to yourself you're not improving, you should keep on pushing through that, right? Because if you don't, you will not improve, right? If you don't play, you don't improve. That's literally the play more, right? It's, of course, you need to play correctly, but play more is definitely just helping my case here. And as Zurinator said, a bit talking about the skill set issue at hand here, is it can be fairly frustrating to learn new skills. Of course, having your friends there that are more knowledgeable in the issue, in the skill set, might be able to help you much, much better. But it will be frustrating, but you simply have to reach the level where you're actually enjoying it and having fun with said skill set, and it just becomes such a breeze from there. You gotta take my word for it. It's honestly amazing. I think I managed to go over most of my points that I wanted to talk about here, and I just wanted to mention that this is all simply based on my personal experience, right? And not all of these will apply equally to everyone, of course, but I'm fairly confident that the general idea of what I'm trying to portray here does. And as I mentioned in the title of the talk, Break Your Walls Before They Break You, is I just wanted to kind of let people in of the ins and outs of this mentality part of Osu that plays such a big role in actually overcoming your obstacles. And I feel like if you are not able to get through that, it will eventually just make you start hating the game, and that's something that definitely would not be that nice, you know. And I think that should be all for my talk here. I will be open to a couple questions if you guys want to ask away. I will be waiting for Hypno to join again so we can actually go over that. And I hope I was as helpful as I could be, because that's all I really wanted to do with coming here.
Hello again.
Hello.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for sharing that story. I think your case is somewhat unique in it seems like you had a very rapid improvement relative to most people. And while obviously I think that can really feel motivating and feel nice in the moment, it's tricky because it sets certain expectations on how you expect to improve in the future as well. It's like the saying, past performance does not indicate future results. And while obviously you can learn general trends of how things have gone based on past performance, it's very dangerous to set expectations based on how things have been in the past. And
For sure.
when those expectations aren't met, it's even more dangerous to feel upset or feel that you're being wronged by yourself or the universe because the past performances have not been repeating themselves. So yes, very well said. And especially I think, at least for me, what I got out of your talk is expectations both in yourself and your past performance, but also in how other people expect you to perform based on how they have perceived your past performance. And that especially you mentioned when playing in tournaments, how you would sometimes have this pressure on you that because people know you as someone who plays in tournaments, that they would expect you to be the best performing player or something similar to
Exactly,
that.
pretty much.
So, yeah, I think that's something that even if people can just become aware of those things, it can be very, very, I think, eye-opening to those people, but also improve the general quality of interactions with one another, because people don't realize necessarily that, I mean, they're not intending to set such expectations on you in a way that is damaging. They just sort
Oh,
of...
for sure, for sure.
So, yeah, there's no malicious intent, but I think understanding what your expectations could do when you impose them onto others can help people be a bit more cautious about that.
Yeah, again, as you said, I think my case is fairly particular, as I think I mentioned myself as well, right? But what I wanted people to take away from here is the general idea behind it, and not the whole, oh, this applies to basically no one because no one is in your specific situation, you know? If that makes any sense. That's kind of...
Well,
Yeah.
I think even if you're the only person who has lived your specific situation, I think the human experience is much more universal than many realize. So I definitely think it's worth sharing your story in its entirety, and it will resonate with people, or at least help people draw connections in ways that you may not even predict. So yes, definitely appreciate it that you share your story. There's one question that came in, or I guess two questions from one person, from Zachman, who first question is, what are your thoughts on infinite goals? Say you want to keep your accuracy above 99%. That's an endless goal with no easily defined endpoint.
About that first question, I think that is feasible, but in the end, it just probably holds you back more than it helps you, at least in those terms of goals. And I will be talking about another particular case, and I think most people should be aware of who they are. In this case, Checha, right? Checha set themselves to be like fairly like uh, focused 100% accuracy player, and I don't know, from being close with him, I know that they just it has been really hard on them because they had to play offline to actually improve, and they are soon to be ending their journey in full SS in their profile. So I think it depends. If it's in the case of accuracy, for example, I think it would probably hinder you more than it would help you. But that's just considering Chech's experience, which doesn't apply to everyone. So if that's what you set yourself to be, then that's great. Because, for example, I always aspire to keep my accuracy above the 99% level, and I think Habib can probably confirm that it's somewhat hard to do it on a higher level of gameplay.
Yeah.
But sometimes if it happens to score lower than that, it happens, and that's completely all right.
If I had to give my thoughts as well on what you describe as infinite goals, I think you reach a point where it becomes more identity driven rather than about the result itself. I think if you have an infinite goal set for yourself, if you want to keep your accuracy, let's say your profile accuracy at 100%, so you want to, it creates an identity for yourself as a player who is like that. And as long as you maintain, I think as long as the goal is strong to maintain that, I think that it's a sign of it being tied to an identity, or sort of you create this identity and then you're creating those goals around it. So I think arguably, if you think about it that way, it's hard to describe them as goals. It may have been a goal in the first place. Let's say your accuracy was below 99, and then your goal is to reach 99, and then once you reach that, then the goal becomes to stay there.
Yeah, just it's tough in general. I think it's very case to case basis because, again, as Habib said, I don't think that's really a goal. That's just a limitation you're setting on yourself mostly.
Well, I'm not sure if I would call it a limitation.
Probably not the
Well,
correct
it's
word. And yeah,
well, I get what you mean. I think more of a boundary that you set for yourself.
probably closer.
But yeah, and then the second question from Zachman is, how many goals should you have at a time? Longer goals like the one above should be accompanied by smaller ones, but what should you stay focused on? I know this is subjective, but I'm curious.
Honestly, I think you should not be focused on goals, period, because that would enter the whole issue of expectations against goals. If you're focused on hitting a certain goal, um, how do I put it? If you're focused on hitting a certain goal, it will become more of an expectation for you. And if you don't, you might get frustrated. That's at least how I view it. And all the goals I always try to set on myself were just something that, I could achieve by playing and improving, if that makes any sense. I hope I made myself clear. And I'm sorry if my English is any bad. Just second language is always funny.
No, I think you made your point pretty clear. It's definitely dangerous to focus on goals specifically, and I would agree and add that I think it's sometimes less about focusing on achieving your goals and more about having goals as a way to keep you motivated or using goals as a source of motivation rather than focusing only on reaching that destination.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. For sure.
All right, next question from EK once again. Mentality alone will not help you perform in maps outside your skill range, but proper mental facilities will help you to break through smaller barriers and improve efficiently. How do you set up expectations and goals that don't frustrate you?
I think that's a really touchy topic to speak on because I think that's very subjective as well. I think all of us know our own limitations in terms of our patience and tolerance regarding all those issues and what would frustrate us and what wouldn't. And just think again, as you said, I think at least as was said before, I think setting bigger goals and smaller goals is important. I don't think you should hyperfixate on them. And proper, as you said, proper mental does facilitate to break through those smaller barriers, improve efficiently. But your goals should just be something, man. If you just want to say, "Oh, I want to FC the Big Black someday," that can be a goal for you. You never know, and you're just playing randomly, and you sometimes just FC the map. Who knows, man? I think that's just the way you can set up those kinds of things, if that makes any sense. Yeah, man. I hope I was able to answer that question then, because I think that's a very subjective term, like subjective thing in terms of what you think would frustrate you or not, and just I think if you don't hyperfixate on the goals, it should be mostly all right, and you shouldn't get burned out from them.
Yeah, I think you did a pretty good job answering that topic as a whole. I'm not sure how much this relates to this specific question, but at least something that comes to mind is when you ask, how do you set up expectations and goals that don't frustrate you? It's important, first and foremost, to know what does frustrate you in the first place. And I don't quite remember the term for this, but this is a general, like, mental strategy that you can use to decide what the best course of action is. Where if you have a goal and you are trying to figure out how to achieve it, then instead of figuring out how to achieve that goal, then you think of all the ways that you could completely destroy that goal or like do the opposite of that goal. or ways that that goal could go wrong. And interestingly, it's much easier to think of that list of how things can go wrong than how things can go well or right. I think a more broad example would be, let's say you're trying to become a better friend, very generally. And so instead of asking yourself, what are things that I can do to be a better friend? Then you try to wonder, what would I do if I wanted to be the worst friend possible? So you come up with that
and
list.
you just do exactly the opposite.
Yeah, exactly. You come up with that list and then just do exactly the opposite. And that will most likely get you in a much closer spot to that goal. So relating back to this question, how do you set up goals and expectations that don't frustrate you? To some extent, I think the same method of deciding or answering that would apply, where you have to figure out what does frustrate you, first of all, and then it should be much easier to work backwards from there.
I think there's this question by Palide. I think that's how you read the name. Would you mind if I read that one myself?
Oh, yeah, go for it.
So it asks, can you become good without goals, literally by just playing a lot? I think you don't have to set yourself goals. I think goals are always cool because, again, even if you're not improving in ranks, you get that dopamine rush of like, oh, I've wanted this for a long time and I've actually finally achieved that. And that's always really, really cool, right? And that just gets your gears going, just makes you want to play more. But I don't think you need them necessarily to improve. But I think they can certainly be a very driving force. In my case, for example, I have the goal of someday making Portugal go through the qualifier stage of the OWC tournament, right? And yeah, I think that's what keeps on pushing me to become a better tournament player and all of that. So I think they can certainly help you, but I wouldn't say they're mandatory to become a better player.
The good thing is that your brain's ability to improve and your brain's ability to be motivated by certain goals are two separate things. Even if you don't know if you're doing the right thing to improve, or if you don't have a specific motivation or goal that you're striving for, just doing the right things to improve will lead you in that direction. So to answer the question, can you become good without goals? Yes, I think you can, as long as you're doing what you would normally need to do in order to improve. Even if you don't have a specific goal you're working towards, then that you'll still be able to improve. So any last thoughts, Maki, that you'd like to share with the world?
I don't think I have necessarily anything to add around here. I just like to know if there's any more questions that I could answer, and otherwise I will just be going, and I hope I was able to help everyone that was present watching this, and everyone in the future as well that will be watching this. I think this will be recorded and saved, right?
Yes, it will be
Yeah.
uploaded to YouTube. I suspect most of the people who end up listening to this will be listening to the YouTube recording. So yes.
So I really hope I was able to help everyone, just trying to get a better grasp of what could be going wrong, and hopefully you can all become better OSU players and enjoy the game to the fullest.
Yes, thank you for your inspiration and everyone for tuning in, listening to the first day of OSU Talk event. And again, the theme here is overcoming obstacles, and there will be 2 more days of the event. The next talk is scheduled for Saturday at 11 UTC, and then after that, I believe it's 13, and then 13:30, and then 14:30, and then 15 UTC. So look forward to that, and if you're not able to make it, then those will all be recorded and uploaded to YouTube over at the OSU University YouTube channel. So thanks everyone for joining and tuning in, and anyone who listens after the fact as well. If you enjoyed these talks and you think anyone you know may appreciate listening to them, I think the best way to support us is to spread the word and allow this to be the platform for us OSU players to spread their wisdom with the rest of the world. But yes, with that, no dragging things on any longer. Thank you all for listening, and we will see you next time.